Welcome to Babbling by the Brook. I'm Mark Hobie, Paper Mill's producing artistic director. Today I am very happy to have as my guest a longtime Paper Mill collaborator and friend. He's a prolific writer and adapter of musicals, as well as a busy and accomplished director who's helmed our memorable productions of The Baker's Wife, 1776, Holiday Inn, and more. Please help me welcome Gordon Greenberg.
Hello, Mark.
How are you?
I just saw you in person. You're one of the few people in the world that I've seen in person because I'm isolated up in Westchester on acres of woods, and I feel like my whole life is an upload now. I only see people on screen.
It is true. Zoom, which I'd never heard of, except for maybe you'll remember. Do you remember the TV show Zoom?
Of course.
It's the only way that I know the zip code of Boston.
Boston, Mass.
02134.
Oh, I thought it was 03124, but I remember.
Yeah, who knew Zoom? And now our whole lives are on Zoom.
I know. I sort of wish I bought stock in Zoom like a year ago. That would have been smart.
Me too.
But now I don't want to see another Zoom. Like at the end of the day, I just want to see real live people, which is why it was so amazing to be back at Paper Mill 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
shooting the show.
That was great. Just for the viewers who don't know what we're talking about, we worked with you and TheaterWorks USA and did a digital capture of one of their shows, We the People.
We the People, which is about democracy and something that's on everyone's mind right now.
Absolutely. And that was for us, and I guess for you too, dipping our toe for the first time into the whole digital capture world and performing a show on stage but with no audience, and trying to create content to go out in a streaming world. Not what I was trained to do, but
it's so different. I mean, I'm not sure if you know this, but I actually did go to film school at NYU. And I spent like 2 years directing commercials, like sort of promo commercials at J. Walter Thompson, an ad agency. So I had a little bit of experience. And I would say the thing about that show that made it appropriate for this hybrid format was that it felt almost like Zoom, the kid show. And it's like the Electric Company or Sesame Street, because it definitely feels like it's a learning experience and you're speaking to the audience at home. So we played a lot with the actors speaking right into camera and taking advantage of the nuances that you could get when you're that close. And thinking about how, I'm skipping to another chapter in our history together, but with Gary Marshall, from whom I learned so much about film and about life and love and being a loyal person. He used to make suggestions sometimes. I remember once there was a moment in Happy Days where he said, Richie is looking over at Fonzie, and Richie's got his arm around his girlfriend. I forget her name, Mary Lou, something like that. And he sees Fonzie with Pinky, and Fonzie's holding her real tight. So Richie slowly lowers his hand towards her bottom. I said, I don't know that they're going to clock that from the back of Paper Mill. And that was, for me, in a nutshell, an explanation of what you can achieve on film. That's different than what you can achieve in the theater. And what we ended up doing was almost a dance move where he did something fancy and then Richie tried to mimic it. And that would be sort of the musical theater equivalent. Anyway, we were able to do a bit of that with We the People.
But it's true. It's funny that I was saying I never studied or thought that I would ever be involved in. I did a couple of television shows when I was young, an actor and dancer and a choreographer, but now we are all delving into the world of film and TV as we try to present theater in a new way. And actually, Paper Mill 2 weeks ago, we converted the stage kind of into a television studio to capture that show.
Yeah, it was amazing because we talked about like where we were going to shoot from, and we pushed it all upstage to make it easier to light and make it quicker, which meant for those of you at home thinking about this, we didn't have to go into the house and hang lights all the way up on that high ceiling. So it saves like a day. But what it did was suddenly rob us of the proscenium. And I said, I still want to know that we're in a theater when we're shooting this. So Laura Green, who's amazing, sort of said, let's get you a flyman on one of those days. And we sort of had pieces flying in and out, and we used the wings, and that reminded people.
Yeah.
Hopefully will when it's edited.
You could have turned the camera around and showed an empty audience.
Yes, but that would just be sad. I didn't want to be sad about it.
But anyway, so let's go back. I'm going to call out a couple of your credits that people might not know. I mean, the Broadway production of Irving Berlin's Holiday Inn, Guys and Dolls on the West End, starring Rebel Wilson. You just worked on The Heart of Rock and Roll at Old Globe, Barnum at Chocolate Factory in London, Terms of Endearment, starring Alfred Molina, The Secret of My Success, which was at the Paramount outside
Starring Billy Ty.
Starring Billy Harrigan Ty from our production of Cinderella, on and on and on. But and then for us, we're here at Paper Mill, you've done Baker's Wife, Pirates, Happy Days, 1776, and most recently Holiday Inn, which was a recreation of the Broadway production that you and Dennis Jones put together so brilliantly. And then
oh, we loved it. I have to say, even though that's the most recent one, from the first workshop of that, you were there. I mean, I remember specifically, and you were the first person I called afterwards to say, like, what do you think?
What did I say?
I think you said, because Laura Benanti starred in that one, and you said, I think you should hear this without Laura Benanti and just see if you still love it, because she makes everything amazing.
I think that's exactly right. Now I remember that. It was like, she's so good. It might be a good idea to get somebody else. Yeah, she's
really good advice. Yeah. But then we were fortunate or unfortunate enough to have Patty Murin do it, who's also amazing.
Fortunate. She was amazing.
So good. I just meant in that she again, like, made everything look great. And so we had to keep going in and saying, what's really going on under the hood? How do we make sense of this? Because some actors are so good and so positive, and in comedy they say yes and, like, you always have to be plussing, like you do in business, and they are people who take whatever's there and add to it, and Laura does that, and Patty does that, and Nick Rodriguez does that, who came and did it at Paper Mill, and Haley Pashoon
and Jeff Crady.
Jeff Crady.
And Paige.
And Paige Foray was amazing. And we had Corbin Bleu in New York. There was just, some of these people that came into contact with the show that added so much to it. And I think really the first person was you, because you gave us that great advice. Anyway.
Well, I was happy because I did love it. And, the movie's, incredible. So it's great source material, and the music is great. And then it opened in New York. I was just glad that we were able to, after that successful run in New York, bring it here. And we also had on our production Ann Harada, Jordan Gelb.
Yes, we love Ann Harada. She's another one. And Jordan, it was a very warm experience doing it at Paper Mill, I have to say. I also think, I mean, this is a little dishy, but I think the set fit better at Paper Mill. Honestly, I just thought it looked so good.
Well, it was Ana Luiso's at her finest, right? She, an amazing designer, and it was a big set.
Huge set. Well, it was designed initially for Studio 54, which is massive. I mean, Studio 54, we know, was a TV studio and then a disco of ill repute, and now part of the Roundabout Theater. And we did it there, and it was great. What an amazing space filled with wonderful, lovely people. But it is vacuous. It's a really big, it makes Paper Mill feel intimate. And of course, Paper Mill now does feel intimate, I have to say. It was also the first time I worked at Paper Mill with the new decor and the new warmth.
Yeah, we were so lucky that the first lady of Paper Mill, I call her, she's our angel, Carolyn Farolito, and her family helped us renovate the theater, and we did make it more intimate. Brought it in, um, uh, brought the back wall forward in the orchestra, and it's just great. But the
Huge.
other
I mean,
thing
I think it's a huge,
it makes a
huge
difference, right?
difference.
Makes
Ugh,
a difference. It's
I
just
love it.
elegant. Yeah. But the other thing do have to call out was the Dennis's choreography, Dennis Jones' choreography in the show.
So
When I saw
good.
it in New York, I mean, I love him. I've worked with him like 9 times, but it was so wonderful. And that I still can't get over that jump rope tap number, you know,
I
jumping rope.
remember, I mean, I
And
remember when he first came up with that, and we kept like saying, "Do more, do more, do more, plus, plus, plus."
right.
Um, and Dennis is one of the best collaborators there is because he has so much humor and such a great sense of story, and is always willing to work and to evolve with the people around him.
And
Uh,
he's a director too.
Totally.
But I find, and when I talked to him and I said the same thing, he is a director choreographer, but also works as a director or as a choreographer collaborating, right? There are many choreographers who grow into director choreographer who don't ever, I don't want to say step back, it's not stepping back, but be, share the stage with another partner. And he's so gracious about that. But you sort of get two for the price of one, right?
Yeah,
You
no,
get this
totally. That's
unbelievable choreographer with another director's mind.
I understand that. It's, and it's not easy to do that because if you're a director, you have a really clear vision. I remember when I was an actor years ago in one of the many productions of Broadway Bound I did. I think it was at Indiana Rep with Libby Apple, who's phenomenal. She later ran Oregon Shakes, and she was a great director, very wise. And at one point, I said to her during scene work, he's doing it wrong. He should do it like this, because then I could react like that and the audience will feel this. And she said, there are 8,000 different ways to do it. None of them are right and wrong. But the fact that you feel it so clearly and that you have a version of the story you want to tell tells me that maybe you should be a director. Have you considered it? And that was the beginning
Yeah.
of me directing. And I say the same thing when actors come to me and say, I don't think this is right. Would you tell him to change? And I always say, they think I'm kidding, but I'm saying, I got this advice. There's a million ways to tell it.
Right.
But maybe you should direct a version of your own, which would be great. But this version is going to be the one that we're doing right now.
Yeah. So when you direct, do you sort of in your head play every role? Is that the way you sort of put things together?
Well, not just in my head, in my bedroom, Mark. I mean, closets open. No, I I first look at it from outside externally, and I say this sometimes that it feels almost like a mirage in the distance, a little bit vague. Like you have a feeling, you have a notion, but I don't know how we're going to do it all. I know it will have a certain sensibility or a certain aesthetic, and usually there are inspirations. Something like The Baker's Wife, our first show together,
Yes.
was so inspired by I had seen the movie Chocolat, and I loved it so much. And I've always taken French, and I've been such a Francophile my whole life that I thought this feels like almost like one of those Peter Mayle books, A Year in Provence. You remember he
Mhm.
used to write those, and when I was an actor and whenever I was stressed, I would get into the bathtub and read A Year in Provence because it would just feel calming. And I felt like the show had that sense of being on vacation for a couple of hours. Now we have House Hunters International for that. But back then we had to go and see the musical.
And
And
that
so
that was an unbelievable production. Again, I remember this Ana Luisos set, right?
the
With
set was a triumph.
the turntable, and I will never forget her attention to detail always floors me. And I kept watching the set. When it arrived in the theater, I thought, this is amazing. And then it just kept getting better and better. And I think we were probably in previews already. And there was a rehearsal in the afternoon, and we were fixing stuff up. And there was a, I don't know if you remember, there was a stairway on stage left. and she was like crawling on the stairway on a break. And I went up to her, I'm like, what are you doing? And she had little pieces of grass and weeds that she was gluing in
Yes.
cracks of the steps. And I was like, that's amazing. And most people will never even see that, but that kind of texture is what she does for the physical production. But I always feel like it's what you do with the show. And the depth of what you deliver and what you direct is so, layered. And you do a lot of pre-pro and research and dramaturgy, I think, ahead of time. I'm always impressed when we get into the audition process and you have like volumes of things in your mind already to hand the actors.
Well, I do feel like it's a privilege to be able to live in these other worlds. Like we as theater makers and really artists of all sorts get to live a million lives. And when you're putting yourself into the show as different characters, or when you're standing back and trying to imagine this world, my best tool for truly kind of connecting with it is to put myself deeply in that place. And I guess that's the part that comes from being an actor. But I always say, if you're a really good actor or writer or director or artist of any sort, you're kind of trying to tap into something that you don't access easily, something that you don't get every day. It's like drilling for oil in Texas or something. And when you hit it, it's like a gusher of realization or catharsis. And that's why people come to the theater, because we're doing all the hard work of breaking ground and trying to find that for you so we can put the emotional intelligence on stage. And of course, it's wrapped hopefully in beauty and kinetics and excitement and tunefulness and all these other things. But when that's a part of it, when that is the core, like the vein that runs through it, it's theater at its best. It can be so exciting.
I agree. And I think that that's the difference. There are many shiny, pretty shows that you can watch, but you're not moved, right?
Yeah.
It's a great experience, but it feels on the surface. And I always feel that the shows that you deliver go much deeper. There's an emotional component, even if it's a silly show like Happy Days, which we'll talk about in a minute, right?
Silly.
Right. But Baker's Wife was so rich and deep. And I remember in college listening to that album that was Patti LuPone when she was very young. And his name escapes me now.
Paul Sorvino?
Yes, Paul Sorvino. And hearing those songs, that Stephen Schwartz music, and the complicated story, those relationships and stuff. And we had an amazing cast too, right? Alice Ripley.
All of them.
Lenny Wolpe and Max Van Essen, and just a great company. So
Kevin Del Aguila.
Oh, Kevin, right?
Most recently of Frozen.
But also, I remember Stephen Schwartz talking about the show. And when we first went to meet with him to talk about producing it here at Paper Mill, because you'd done a reading of a new script, the script had been tweaked. And he was anxious because he said it always felt like an unfinished work for him. And I remember hearing from him after it opened, and he was thanking everybody involved and you at the top of the pyramid for saying, I can finally sleep at night because now my dream of what the show could be has been realized in this production. And I thought
that was so gratifying and unexpected. I mean, we did work 5 years on it, but I think the cherry on top of the cake was, I think, him feeling good about it. And even the New York Times, which I know no one likes to think about reviews, but I think that review actually did say they finally have the show they've always wanted. Like they literally said that, which was interesting.
Well, you think there's so many shows that we see and that travel through our lives that feel unfinished. They didn't get there. You know, Chess is one. I feel like Sideshow is one.
Right.
All these shows.
So good.
Merrily, right?
Merrily, yeah.
All these great shows, but somehow never made it to that place. And to know that, certainly in the eyes of the, creator, composer, that you made it happen.
That
You and
was
that
amazing.
Paper Mill was able to give birth to that production. I've always been so proud of that. But
No, that paper mill production was, it was astonishing. It was a great time, and I think just sort of being able to realize it on such a grand scale with the best of the best. With,
yeah,
I mean, we had Kathy Zuber and Anna Luizos and
right.
Jeff Kreuter and you and Patrick and everyone at the paper. It was just so great.
I want to jump forward a little bit, skipping over two important shows, but to 1776 because another show. Uh, so what a deep tapestry of emotion and a roller coaster ride of a piece. And you directed a really incredible production starring Don Stevenson.
Don was amazing in it. And I
Unbelievable.
remember at the auditions for that, I had never seen the movie, never. And
Oh,
everyone was coming in doing that Bill Daniels thing, which I now know. And I said, "Why, Mark? Why?"
which was like talking, not singing.
Yeah, I said, "Why are they all talking like that? Is there something I don't know?" And you're like, "It's the movie. They're all doing the movie." And Don came in and was such an original.
Yeah,
And I mean, Don is in life, but he's that guy who is so kind of quirky and full of spark and energy, and you're never quite sure kind of what he's trying to say, was so perfect for that misunderstood guy that
exactly.
there was no question.
His mind spinning all the time. You can see it happening, but he's totally unpredictable. And you think that has to be the force in that room. I mean, Bob Cuccioli was in that production, remember, of these mostly very settled, staid men who are within their convictions and going down one road, whichever direction they were in. And this guy has to like stir it all up and like shoot off fireworks and then pull it back together and get everybody on the same page. And Don was incredible. We had a great group of men in that show.
Everyone,
Yeah,
James Barber, Griffin Matthews, and then Carrie O'Malley,
right.
uh,
Carrie was, and
Lauren Kennedy.
Lauren Kennedy, beautiful Lauren. Those two women who are so striking.
So good. And
Yeah,
I mean, the other thing about that was, I think this is way before Hamilton, but
right.
it was a moment to reframe the way we saw these people that were supposedly like dusty icons from a history book.
Right.
And I remember I went to see the film Milk, um,
Mm.
and watching that and suddenly having this realization that this man had to fight so hard for his own basic civil rights, made something in me wake up that had always taken that for granted in the world. And suddenly I realized on an even larger scale, all of our founding fathers were literally revolutionaries. They were fighting for their lives, and it was dangerous. And it was that sense of danger that we really tried to capture in the room between each other, the combustibility of being in a room together with your enemies, and the fact that ultimately they shouldn't have been enemies. They all should have been fighting for the same thing, which is familiar right now in the
Well,
world.
that's what I was saying. I said, I programmed that show. I knew it was going to be right after an inauguration.
Yes.
Remember there was an election in November and the show happened, I think, in January.
That was right after Obama went in the first time, right?
And I thought, wow, if he wins, this is going to take on a whole new meaning. And if he loses, we need this piece to remind us where the country started
Yes.
and where we need to be headed. And we all know the way it went. And the show was wildly successful. Yeah, I thought, again, before Hamilton, we need to be reminded how this all happened. And it wasn't easy. It was fighting and angry and people who were really believed in what they believed, but they somehow came together to create this country, and gave us enough leeway that 200 and some years later, we're still following their guidelines and trying to figure it out, you know.
Yep.
But it was great, and Don was unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah, it was such a joy to do, such a joy.
I always say too, I love that show because you go into the show knowing what happens. I mean, we all know what happens, but right, every night you're sitting on the edge of your seat, and this has a lot to do. I have to hand it to you with your direction and with the acting. And you're wondering, are they going to do it? Are they going to get to the votes? Are they going to sign it? Even though you walk in knowing that's going to happen, but the tension and the reality of what you're witnessing is palpable.
Well, hopefully, if you're following the argument, like where the energy in the room is going at any given moment, we can feel it now.
Wait, let's go back now, because I feel like we're here sitting talking with you in the middle of a crisis, right? And it's a crisis in the world and certainly for the entertainment industry. And that feeling is not unfamiliar to us here at Paper Mill, because in 2007, we went through this before, although it was just us in a financial crisis. It wasn't the whole world and the entertainment industry, but you were with us right at that. And I always think of you because two of your productions sort of bookended this moment in time where Paper Mill could have gone out of business. And, one of them was Pirates, right? Which was a terrific sort of, with Nell Benjamin, re-envisioning of the Gilbert and Sullivan Pirates of Penzance, but told with the flavor of the Johnny Depp movies, right?
We reset it in the Caribbean because the original Pirates, while brilliant, references so many kind of tropes that are no longer familiar to people. Right. So like, in the 19th century, Gilbert and Sullivan were mocking something like the idea of duty, which throughout the show they keep referring to Frederick and his feelings of duty, but saying that then was sort of like saying family values now, or something that is widely held in esteem and we suspect might be hollow sometimes or overused. And then there's a lot of references to Queen Victoria, but they were very current at the time and they don't resonate in the same way. So we said, let's look at the idea of British imperialism and empire and colonialism and find things that are human and ageless and more familiar to our audiences to make fun of. So we did that, hopefully holding on to the style and adding palm trees.
Yeah, palm trees, but also that Caribbean flavor, like the music was reorchestrated.
Oh, yeah.
There
John
was
McDaniel.
John McDaniel was amazing. And great cast, Andrew Varela, Barrett Foa.
Right.
Right, Liz McCartney, I think, and Farrah Alvin.
Right, so many great people. Jerry Mack.
But what was amazing about that was it was a partnership we had with Goodspeed, and they did a smaller version of the show in their opera house, and then we were supposed to realize the grand, Paper Mill version that was hopefully going to move to New York. And we were in such a financial crisis, we couldn't do it. And we literally going out of business. And I remember meeting with you and saying, we need this show. Can we do it like concert style? And you were like, okay, yeah. And you re-envisioned it. We had the band on stage. We used costumes and props that the Goodspeed donated to us. Rehearsed, I think you rehearsed like 7 days on the set, like as we were loading it in.
Mark, that rehearsal was so funny because we had 7 days. We literally split the cast into 3, and Warren Carlisle, the choreographer, took a third of them. I took a third of them. And I think Tori Ross took a third of them. Do you remember Tori?
Yes, because she was one of the sisters and she taught all the sisters, all the sister choreography, I remember.
Yeah, so she just took care of that. And I took the principals and Warren took all the dancers. And we came back together for like 2 days and threw it together.
And it was so good and so funny. And I remember going in and sitting and talking about having to rethink that show with the designers and with you. And we had this fully designed production, a beautiful set, and all of that had to sort of go away and we had to rethink it. And so there was a sense of disappointment about, well, this one, it's not what we intended. And it was incredible.
I loved it. Again, another huge important lesson was that there's such a joy and almost a thrill to like flying a little bit by the seat of your pants. And now I get off on it when people say, if we're in the room, they say, oh, by the way, we have to cut that wall. What do you want to do? And I'm like, take 5. We'll be right back. And I'll come up with something.
And our audiences loved it. Well, the core material, the Gilbert and Sullivan show is great. And then how you and Nell and John textured it and made it so contemporary feeling. But I do remember, I can't remember who it was. There was a New York producer who came in and wanted to take the concert version into New York for a
Yeah,
limited run at the
Bob
Palace.
Boyette.
Right, at the Palace. Oh, that's the Bob Boyette story. Here we go. That
Yeah,
leads us right to the next story. I'd forgotten that.
which led to Happy Days.
Right. And so Pirates is the show that let us finish the season where we almost went out of business. And then going into the fall, we had announced another show as the opener. It was a musical version of Frankenstein. And it was one of the first enhanced contracts that I did with a commercial producer. We hadn't signed it yet because we weren't signing anything. And I remember this then because Bob Boyette, who had talked to us about moving the concert version in, called and said, I want you to look at Happy Days, the musical. And I said, okay, but we don't have a space for it. And he goes, I want you to look at it. So I read it. And then I even went out to Burbank and met with
Gary.
Gary Marshall and who was his sister? Not
Kathleen.
what?
Now his sister is Penny, his daughter Kathleen.
Yes, right, his daughter. That's right. At the theater. And I knew it was funny and then we talked about it and but I felt so bad because we'd already made a commitment to this other show. And Bob Boyette called up and he said, I'll never forget this. What's it going to take for you to do this show? And I said, we've already announced it. And he said, well, what's it going to take? And I said, $1 million. And I never said that before in my life. And he said, well, I wasn't thinking that much. And I said, well, that's what it's going to take for me to kick this out and, do your show. And I thought we lost it. And a couple of days later, he called back and came to terms. It wasn't exactly. we said goodbye to the Frankenstein musical and we produced Happy Days. And
well, it's very similar. I mean, the piece.
Frankenstein the musical, Happy Days. But what I didn't realize was, one, the partnership with Bob Boyette, which what a classy man and just a great commercial producer. Bringing Gary Marshall into the theater, that production with Rory O'Malley and Joey Sorge, who played the Fonz, remember?
So good. So many great people.
And that opening this season, the new paper mill, that was the beginning of the new paper mill. And I
don't think I even remember that was the first.
Oh, it was it. I remember because we had a red carpet. We did a whole big celebration about, we were thinking that Pirates was going to close paper mill maybe for a year. And we were going to take a year to regroup. And instead we kept pushing forward. And Happy Days, a new musical, was how we opened the next season. And it was very successful and people loved it. And
I remember Anne Hathaway was there at opening.
Anne Hathaway was there and it was terrific. It was a lot of fun. And then it went on again. It went back to Goodspeed, I think, and did a tour.
Right. Yeah. Then it went back to Goodspeed in the new paper mill version. Right. And then it went on tour for like 2 years, which was great. And I think it's still playing in Italy. They love it.
They love Happy Days. But we grew up with that TV show and had such nostalgia. And just, I think for us at that moment in time, it was important to have something that was about family, that was about innocence, right? There was great emotion and love in the show, but it was about joy and celebration and to lift us as an organization up and the community and our patrons and supporters. I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, it was the perfect show for that. And thanks to you. Thank you, Cordone.
And that sense of like nostalgia and remembering what's most important in life was what everyone needed to hear at that moment after a really rough few months.
Yeah, it was rough for us. And then, soon after that was the stock market crash. So it was a rough time and it was really good, like comfort food for everybody. It was just a fun time. So anyway, I don't want to look forward to the next crisis and then ask you to come back.
Happy Days Part 2.
But it would be great to find another project. I know we've talked about several shows, new projects you're working on. I went to the reading of Secret of My Success. I know that was out in outside Chicago. You're working with Chris Hertzberger on that one, right?
Yes.
And a couple of other shows that we just haven't found our match, but I'd love to do that.
Anytime. I'd always like sort of bring it to you first.
Oh, that's kind. But I do want to say you said it to me, and I said it right back to you when we were 2 weeks ago standing out in the back parking lot because the TheaterWorks show actually rehearsed in a tent for safety measures. You said to me you felt so great about being here at Paper Mill among friends and family. And I said, I feel the same about you and that team because TheaterWorks has been a partner in our children's series for many years. And for the first time, literally the first time since March to open the theater, no one had been in the theater on the stage since whatever, March something. So it felt like welcoming family back. So anyway.
Well, thank you so much. I honestly, it was, I got teary-eyed, and still am just thinking about it. Like literally walking in, I had that moment of looking out to the house, and I didn't realize how much I missed it. You just,
remembering what it is we do.
Yep.
And the excitement of bringing that kind of joy to thousands and thousands of people.
It's in our blood.
It's who we are.
It's who we are.
Well, we got to find another one. So let's talk. All right. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see you, and I hope to see you very soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for tuning in and for supporting Paper Mill Playhouse. Join us next week on Babbling by the Brook when director and writer Mark Waldrop drops in to give us a preview of Paper Mill's upcoming production of the musical comedy romance Pete and Keeley. See you then.